Jesus says that on that day, many will say to me, Lord, Lord, didn't I prophesy in your name? Didn't I drive out demons in your name? And I will say to them, away from me, you workers of iniquity, which is lawlessness. I never knew you. My whole goal in life is to have him say, well done, faithful, good and faithful servant, not get away from me, you worker of lawlessness. So I started thinking about the law, right? And the law is kind of a confusing topic. Because when we say the law, what are we talking about? Are we talking about like the Levitical law? Are we talking about the law of Moses? Are we talking about some other law? Are we talking about the laws of our nation? Are we talking about, the local laws, the federal laws, the state laws? What are we talking about? What is law? Laws, turns out it must be pretty important, because if you don't know the law, you'll probably work lawlessness, right? So what I've been trying to do, what I see is that the enemy comes to confuse. He comes to confound and eventually to steal and destroy and kill. But the law doesn't come for that. The law should be clear. The law should be clarified. So I'm trying to bring some clarity to the thing, and maybe define the falsely redefined terms in terms of the law. What I see is that Jesus was asked about that, and Jesus answered pretty simply in the positive. The law can be summed up like this: love the Lord your God with all your heart and all your mind and all your soul and all your strength, and likened unto that is love your neighbor as yourself. I thought about that, and I thought, yeah, that's right.
Is this the origins of the Jubilee Solution that you're telling me?
Yeah, this is the origins and also the reason, right? Mm-hmm. Ultimately, the reason is kind of a personal one. I don't want Jesus saying to me, away from me, worker of iniquity, lawlessness. So I think I need to know what the law is. So we find out, well, the law is love. But then you have to think, well, what does that mean? What is love? How do you love? How do we know, right? How do I know if I'm loving or not? So I go a little deeper, and I think, well, that's a positive description of the law, which would make sense. Jesus makes the positive description because he's the good, right? But there's also a negative side. There's also a negative, right? If you are going to love, you'd have to know what it means to not love, right? So you think about that, and I came to the conclusion that our founders of this nation came to the same conclusion, that there's a self-evident truth, and it has authority. Truth has authority. Turns out we recognize truth is truth. So there's truth and there's deceptions and lies. And the truth is, people have rights. They're endowed by the highest authority, which is the Creator. You can't get any higher than the Creator. And if you want to understand authority, just look above, right? Because all authority comes from above. And if the supposed authority is pushing an agenda that doesn't align with the authority that comes from above, they've stepped outside of their authority, right? So you could describe the law as in the thou shalt not, the negative. What don't you do? What do? You love, right? What does it mean? How do you do it? How do you not do it? You don't do it by transgressing the rights of another. You do it by respecting the rights, right? See, ultimately you could say positive of the law is love, negative of the law is don't steal, right? Don't take or withhold that which does not belong rightfully to you. How do you know what that is? Well, the founders laid it down like this. It starts with life, right? You know, we all know it. You can't come across and just try to kill me right now. You can't kill me without transgressing my rights. How do I know that? I just know it, right? That's the strangest part, is we just know that one intrinsically, right? If somebody goes and just murders somebody, everybody knows, no, you can't just do that. And why do we know that? Because we wouldn't want that done to us. We wouldn't want that done to our children. We wouldn't want it done to anybody. And we know we have a right to life. So we also know the fact that we have the right to life, we have the right to the air, right? Like, I can't really say you have a right to life, but not to air, right? I can take away all the air and still insist you have a right to life, right? And I'm getting at all the things we actually have rights to, right? And the founder said life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness, right? But really it's all the things that progress logically from the right to life, which is the foundational, fundamental thing. If you have a right to life, it means by default you've got a right to air, right? If I try to monopolize the air, I'm taking away your right to life, which means I'm making a slave of you, basically. This is why they say liberty, right? Liberty is the second one that precedes, basically. You got a right to life, and I also can't monopolize the things that you need for life, right? So then the question becomes, well, can I just...
Yeah, because you could be alive and a slave.
Yes, you can be alive and you can be a slave. And I could try to say, you don't have a right to the air, or you don't have a right to water. But if I do that, I'm basically turning you into a slave, right? Or no? Do you see it?
If I have to go through you to get...
Right. If I say, you can't have any of the air, you got to come to me, and I'll tell you whether or not there's anything you can do to earn you the privilege of air, right? I submit to you, you don't have a privilege to air. You have a right to air. Everyone has a right to air, and it's an equal right. That's how you recognize a right. Rights differ from privileges in that they belong to everyone, right? If they don't belong to everyone, by default, they're a privilege, not a right. If I can issue them to you, then I'm issuing you privilege, right? What we're ultimately saying is there's one that's the highest authority, right? We don't have to agree on everything regarding the highest authority in order to have a group, right? In order to have a nation. And in fact, most of us would agree you should be free to seek that highest authority, to learn about the highest authority, to know God, right? We could call it God, right? Some people won't like that word. I get it. You don't have to like the word. That's why the founders used the word the creator, right? Because the creator, there can be lots of gods, right? But there's only one creator. There's only one unsourced source. There's only one source, right? That's the unsourced source. And we can agree on that. But if we don't agree on that, then we're agreeing that the authority is something else, right? And if we're agreeing the authority is something else, interestingly enough, most of the people who want to say the authority is something else other than the highest source, that really it's them or their group, right? What they really want to do is they want to set themselves up as God, right?
So Andy, while you're catching a breath there,
Yeah.
you've mentioned life. The founders described our rights as life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Did they get it right, or were they missing anything?
No. Well, yes, they got it right. And no, they didn't get it right. They left out a crucial one, and I think they left out the crucial one because of the timing, right? At the time, the hard part is we all get programmed, right? We all come into this world as a baby. We're basically completely ignorant. We don't know anything. We're just like, what's going on, right? And then we start setting about learning and gaining in understanding and gaining in wisdom and figuring out what's going on, right? And we get a lot of information and input from people who have their own framework, right? People who came before us, and we have to take a bunch of it on trust, right? The problem happens when they abuse the trust, right? Or oftentimes, not even wittingly, not even knowingly, they present us with a framework because it's what they're used to, right? So when you think about the start of the United States of America, all the Europeans who had come, most of them had come from England, right? And they were working under the framework, under the worldview of an English subject, right? Because in England they had kings, right? And the kings said, I'm the law, basically. I'm the law. I'll tell you what the law is. I'm the law. I'll tell you what you deserve. I'll tell you what your rights are, right? Only they don't use rights because there's a king. Only the king's a sovereign. Kings have rights. Well, so says the self-evident truth that either the kings are the law or there is a law and even kings are subject to the law. And if history shows us anything, kings are subject to the law, ultimately. The Nazis thought they weren't subject to the law, right? But ultimately, they lost their place because they stepped outside of the authority, right? And the same thing's happening to us right now as a country. That also concerns me because being in a place of authority affords you certain comforts, right? And stepping out of authority takes those comforts away, takes the position away, and we're well down the path. Sadly, we started out saying it right? Everybody's got rights. They come from the Creator. They're equal. They're certain. They're unalienable. The only way you can basically lose them is if you deny them, right? Like if I tried to kill you, I no longer have a right to life. You could kill me with impunity, right? Why? Not because I didn't have a right to life, because I denied it, right? I denied yours, and in denying your right, I denied there is rights. And that action can't stand, right? This is part of the nature of law, and it's inherent, right? It's not made up by men. We don't make that up. Men aren't lawmakers. Men are law recognizers, right? And that's what leaders do. Leaders recognize the law, and they stick to it. And hopefully they enforce it, right? As you know, I'm a Christian man. I'm a God-fearing man. I would tell you I'm a son of God. So are you. That's your real identity. And thus you're a sovereign under the highest sovereign, right? But I think the big thing that the founders left out is property, right? They didn't want to say it for a lot of reasons, right? If they had said it, they probably wouldn't have won the war for independence, because they would have lost a huge portion of the populace that was supporting them in their bid for independence. If they had said everybody has a right to property, you would think that if they said everybody has a right to air, everybody would agree, right? Because you need air to survive. And you also need liberty. They mentioned that. But if you don't have property, then how are you going to survive, right? The four things you need are air, protection from the elements, water, and property. And food, right? But most of those are products of the land, right? A product of place, right? If you need water, you got to be somewhere to get water. If you need coverings, you got to make coverings, or you have to have a place to have those coverings. And if you need food, it's got to come from somewhere. And it can't be from stealing it from somebody else, right? It could be from charity, right? It could arguably be from charity, and if we could do away with man's greed and selfishness, we probably could live like that. Which, let's keep pushing for that, right? That's an even more perfect union. But when they wrote the Constitution, they said, "We, the people, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity." They realized that's what we organize for. Those are the reasons we organize. 7 reasons, right? That hasn't changed, and we're still supposed to be trying to form a more perfect union. We've made mistakes, right? Just like when we learn to walk as a baby, you make mistakes. It's okay, right? I got 5 kids. They all learned to walk. I didn't think any of them was a failure as they were learning to walk. As they fell over to the right, I wasn't like, "Oh, you're a failure. We should cancel you." You should be canceled. You did something wrong. America's done a lot of wrong stuff. We've done some right stuff too. Thank God we have a good foundation that said it right, even though we didn't do it right. And then we got a little closer, like we abolished slavery, right? That's a fantastic move. Except we didn't really abolish slavery because we didn't recognize that people have a right to property, right? We still, thank God, recognize we have a right to air. And there's a big push to take away your right to the air and call it a privilege and charge you for it, tax you for it, take away from you because you're using the air. That's a globalist agenda, and while I am a globalist, I believe in the sovereign King Jesus, and that one day he will reign over the earth with an iron fist, right? So I am a globalist, but I'm not a globalist until Jesus is here reigning. Until then, I think we need to recognize our equality, the rule of law, and that we should be taking care of the environment. That's true, right? Because we only got one, and if we destroy it, it's not going to be good. But we should be honest about it too. And probably the best way to take care of the environment is to empower all the people to have a little portion of it that they take care of. And when they know they have a portion to take care of, they'll take care of it. And if they don't, it will be to their detriment.
Yeah, that makes sense to me where we missed it, why we're not in freedom. So, Andy, if you had the opportunity, you had the pens of Thomas Jefferson and Benjamin Franklin to edit and rewrite,
Yeah.
to come up with something that would be lasting to make America good, I've heard you say.
Yeah.
How would you do that?
Yeah, that's you hit it. If we want to be great, we got to be good, right? Because you can't be great without being good. If you're evil, you may be big, you may be strong, and you may think you're great. That's the weird thing. There's chaos and there's order, right? And order always will come out of chaos. People will go for order because chaos is disastrous and we hate it. It makes us super uncomfortable. But sometimes the order that comes is really just chaos masquerading as order, right? And that's what you see in most governments since the dawn of time. They basically don't recognize the real rule of law, which is the establishment of order. They get something that is kind of like it, but it gives them power, and then they use that to enforce. What would I do? We'll cover that one next time.